When Judy Benjamin was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, she was told that there was no way to reverse it. But she didn't accept that. Instead, she became the first patient to fully recover using Dr. Dale Bredesen's RECODE protocol, a comprehensive root cause approach to cognitive decline based on a systems biology multimodal approach to dementia. Judy's recovery challenged the conventional narrative around Alzheimer's and opened the door to a new way of thinking about prevention and healing. But Judy didn't stop there. She founded Surviving Alzheimer's, a nonprofit dedicated to education, empowerment, and hope. And now she's walking 3,000 miles across America to share her story and connect with families who are searching for answers. In this interview, you'll hear how Judy reclaimed her mind, what she believes made the biggest difference, and what she's learning on the road, step by step, town by town. As you watch these opening clips of Judy walking, know that this isn't just a personal journey. It's a message that with the right tools, support, and determination, healing can be possible. So let's begin. Hi, I'm Dr. Sharon Goldberg. I'm the host of the Healing Dementia Summit, and I am so honored to be here today with Judy Benjamin, who is currently, you've been walking for 7 months, right, across America.
Yes, I have. That's a long time.
It's incredible. So thank you so much for joining us. And I am really excited to hear your story. So how could we kind of back up and could you tell us a bit about your initial diagnosis? How did that affect you? What was going on?
Well, I was 67 years old and having increasing symptoms that I knew because my mother passed away from Alzheimer's after a 20-year battle. And I very, very well knew what those symptoms were, even from the very beginning. And I started to have them myself and became, as they grew worse, I became more panicked about it and think, oh no, here it is. I'm on that slippery slope into despair. And that's really how I felt. I went to my doctor. I discussed my symptoms. I had some brain scans and other tests and was told, yes, you have what your mother and your four uncles had. And there's really nothing that can be done. So that's like the worst diagnosis I think anybody can get is that there's nothing to be done.
Mhm.
And being the type of person who doesn't accept that readily, I just thought, well, I'm going to do all I can. I'm going to find out what can I do and do everything possible to fight this. And so that's what I've done.
Amazing. So how did you find Dr. Bredesen?
Oh, that's a very interesting question because I had never heard of him and I'd never heard of any way to reverse the symptoms, actually. I knew about a certain of the early tested drugs, and I also knew because we had tried them even on my mom before they had become totally approved by the FDA. And Aricept was the one, and it made her worse. It really, she had a horrible reaction to it, and she had to be taken off of it. And so I thought, well, there's nothing really out there from the standpoint of from pharmaceuticals. But my one of my dearest and oldest friends knew Dr. Bredesen because he was a board member of her company, and she knew of his research and that he was working on this theory that it's the assault of inflammation on the brain that causes the brain to malfunction, and it's different for different people. It's not the same for everyone. So anyway, she suggested that I go out to San Francisco and meet with Dr. Bredesen and see what could be done. And I jumped at the opportunity because it was really my only option rather than just giving up altogether. So I flew out to California and met with Dr. Bredesen at the Bucks Institute, and he proceeded to spend about 2.5 hours going over his theory and what he thought was, the main problems were, which really was an assault of inflammation on the brain, that the brain just gets hit with all of these different things. And I can go into detail about some of those that were affecting me, but among them were things like mold, very poor sleep, not giving the brain a chance to flush out the toxins and rest. and poor exercise, a lot of stress. I was in a very stressful line of work, and and very deficient. Did a lot of blood work, blood tests that showed that I was low in many of the important biomarkers that we know now you need to be a healthy, functioning person that can resist these assaults on the brain.
And
So
what were you doing? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if you were going to tell us more
it's
about that.
fine.
But what were you doing at the time? I really want to kind of hear, what were you doing at the time? How old were you then, if you don't mind my asking, when things started?
I was 60. Well, I was 67 when I got the diagnosis, but I had had symptoms, I would say, a good 7 to 10 years prior to that. There was, little by little, I was forgetting things, not feeling as sharp, not able to do analytical work as I had always done. And it kind of creeps up on you. It's not like you wake up one day and you have Alzheimer's. I mean, maybe
Hmm.
that could happen to someone, but I've not really heard of it. So it's something that is insidious. It creeps up on you, and you suddenly realize I am not the person that I used to be, and my
Hmm.
brain is not functioning as it should. So yeah, and so the work that I was doing and had done for many years is international development, working in the humanitarian field and
Hmm.
mostly in war affected and conflict affected countries. So I was doing a lot of work in Afghanistan, Pakistan, in Yemen. I was doing work in African countries, Sierra Leone, Liberia, places that had been affected by revolutions and rebels.
Hmm.
And traveled extensively to those countries. I was a consultant for USAID and also for a number of UN agencies and the World Bank, spending time in like Cambodia and Vietnam. So I would go to these countries and do assessments and evaluations to see how the money was being spent there and if it was being spent correctly and equitably, particularly for the needs of women and children. So I was
Hmm.
considered an international specialist on gender and equality for women and children in terms of receiving international aid.
So that was a very high level kind of technical. It required you to be functioning at a very high level to do this sort of intellectual work. And so when things got kind of, I would say, I don't want to say hit bottom, but when the symptoms were at their worst point, how did it affect your life? Like just so we understand, because now it's amazing what you're doing. You just almost done walking across the country, but it would be really good for our listeners to understand how were you doing when you were diagnosed? Kind of like, how was it impacting you?
Well, when I first really started noticing it, I noticed that I was having difficulty really writing up my reports, writing a comprehensive evaluation report. I still a highly functional person, and but just being able to do that using the executive functioning part of my brain was just not working properly. It would just take me extended periods of time to do the simplest things that I had previously done practically in my sleep. I'd done them really well. And
Hmm.
I found it just more and more difficult to do things that I was supposed to be doing. But it wasn't only about work, it was just driving on the freeway, not getting lost, being disoriented in terms of where I am, my position. This is a very common early symptom of Alzheimer's and other neurological disorders is you get disoriented very easily, get lost very easily. I mean, even sometimes parking your car and going into a shopping center and then coming back. And I mean, we've all misplaced our cars, but I was doing it, every single time. I
Hmm.
finally would have to take a photograph of where my car was and then the picture of the numbers and then hope I could find it. But it got increasingly worse to the point where I felt I was not really doing a very good job in my work.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
God, and how
it
about
was
at
extremely.
home? Were
Well, at
things
home, I mean,
impacted at home?
Yes, of course they were. I've always been an avid reader and just reading constantly. And I found that even reading the newspaper, I'd start reading an article and find myself having to go back to the first paragraph and rereading it because I would forget what was the main point of this. And
Hmm.
I also found that I couldn't finish books. I would try to read a book and not be able to pick up the storyline. I'd have to go back and review it, and I just knew that my brain wasn't working. This was I mean, it was disastrous. It was just so disheartening to find yourself in that position, especially for people who've seen a loved one go through this. I think for
Yeah.
people who haven't, maybe sometimes they make excuses for it and, just say it's a senior moment. But this was much more than a senior moment. This was really falling into the same patterns that I had seen my mother in the beginning, and hers just get worse and worse and worse. And that was what I feared and what I saw happening to myself.
So after you met with Dr. Bredesen and he told you about kind of his rationale and the way he addresses things, did you get started with lifestyle changes right away, or what happened at that point? Like how long did it take to get started with changes? And I'd love to know a bit about what you changed.
Well, I immediately, I've always been the kind of person to embrace whatever it is, I'm going to do it 100%. And I knew then,
Hmm.
and Dr. Bredesen said, it's really about complying to making these changes. And I was absolutely determined that I would do whatever it was. I said, you tell me what to
Hmm.
do, and I will do. And so I had written down some notes because I wasn't really, I didn't feel I could pay attention enough to remember what he had said to me in that meeting. So I took a
Hmm.
lot of notes, and then we had a lot of follow up together. And what I didn't realize at the time was that I was patient zero. I was the first actual clinical patient that Dr. Bredesen had tried his protocol. It was previous to that pretty much research and theoretical, although he had spent many, many years, over 35 years, working on this and at the UCLA labs there as well. And so it was, he had very reasonable ideas that this was the way to go. And so
Hmm.
when he made suggestions for me and I wrote them down, I went home and I immediately, I mean, I cleaned out my cabinets and threw out all of the junky food with artificial sweeteners and additives, and anything that had a lot of ingredients in it was just no, no. It's going to be real
Hmm.
food. Fruits, vegetables. When I started, I was strictly vegetarian, but I've since added seafood. I do eat for my protein content. I do eat. I eat eggs and eat some fish, some salmon, wild caught salmon, and I also had myself tested for mycotoxins from mold because I knew that I had been exposed in many places, both overseas and in my own home. I had an old, over 100-year-old home, a beautiful home, but it had a leaky roof and it had a leaky basement. And I never thought mold was an issue or problem, but I started to do the research on it. And also, based on Dr. Bredesen's research, is that certain people are more susceptible than others. It's a percentage of the global population really lacks the ability to get rid of the toxins as easily as other people can. And that's why you can have a couple living in the same house, the same environment, and one person says, I'm fine, I don't feel anything, and the other person is walking around, nose running, coughing, red eyes, and all of that, which were my symptoms. And I had to get rid of the mole. I got tested, and I was very high in the mycotoxins in my tests, and then I had to get remediation done in my home, which was a major issue. And I think that's something that a lot of people just they don't want to do. It's expensive, and they feel like, well, I've lived with it for X number of years. I'm just going to deal with it, but it's a big mistake because it was making me very sick. So
Mm-hmm.
I did the mold remediation, and then I had to tackle not only my diet, but I had to tackle the fact that I was a poor sleeper. I had sleep apnea, so I had to take a sleep test to see, and it turned out that I was getting many, many interruptions of breathing during my sleep. And therefore, my brain was not getting the oxygen that it really requires to function well. So I was
Mm-hmm.
losing brain cells based on oxygen starvation. I call it oxygen. I don't know if that's a medical term or not, but I said I wasn't getting enough oxygen to my brain. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really the reason that exercise is so good, because when you exercise, your heart beats faster and you get more oxygen, and therefore it's healthier all the way around. So
Mm-hmm.
I increased my exercise. I improved my diet. I worked on my sleep. I got rid of the mold. And from the blood work, the blood tests that I took, I realized that I was deficient in vitamin D. I was deficient in vitamin B12 and a number of other deficiencies that we really need to have a healthy body, healthy functioning body. So I started to supplement based on the lab results, started taking the supplements, and yeah, and it was a lot of things. I took up yoga. I started going every day for yoga classes to the point that I was convinced by the yoga studio I should become a yoga teacher. So I said, okay, why not? So I became a certified yoga teacher, and then I did the
Wow.
advanced course. So I became a therapeutic yoga teacher, and I still do yoga. I have a daily yoga practice, even as I'm traveling around. Not maybe as much now as I will do when I get home, but whatever I can. So I turned around my life, and it didn't happen overnight, and it can't. We don't get to that point overnight, and you don't really get well from it, in my opinion, overnight either. It's not like you can take a pill or something and get better. You've got to work on it, and that's essentially what I did. I was determined that I didn't want to go down that road that my mom had been down, and I wanted
Yeah.
to make a difference. And for
That's
me, it's worked. I mean, I always say, um, I can't guarantee that it will work for every single person. I think it depends on a lot of things. It depends on how far gone you are, how advanced, how many brain cells have been lost. And I think also in general, how your health is. People who have diabetes can have a much harder time. People who have obesity, it's also a much riskier. So there are a lot of things to consider about getting one healthy enough to be able to improve the conditions enough to where your symptoms will disappear. The protocol that I'm following was developed by Dr. Dale Bredesen, and it basically covers all areas of life to having a healthy life with exercise, good food, good sleep, de-stress, getting rid of toxic things like mold, and supplementing whenever one needs to.
Did you have a sense that there were certain interventions that were more helpful than others, or just did it seem like it was everything together that made the difference collectively?
That's an excellent question, because people always wonder, particularly with a scientific mind, you want to know, well, what really worked better than others? And I was always so afraid to stop many things and just try one and see if it's just exercise or is it just diet. So I haven't, since I started, and I've been on the protocol now over 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be 14 years in April of next year. And I have followed it pretty much the same since then. I've added a lot of things to it, like red light therapy, like sauna, daily saunas, the V light. I mean, I've done a lot more as we've learned about these things that really do help our mitochondria, increase mitochondria production, and help us get more oxygen to the brain. So I've added to it, but I've still basically have followed the principles of the protocol.
Got it. And I think that's such an important point that you're making, that people have to stick with it. That it's not, it's not just something you can do for 6 months or a year and be like, okay, I'm done now. Right, that it has to
But
be, you have to stick with it.
exactly. It's not a short-term program, and I would say it really requires a full commitment. A lot of people want an easy fix, and I'm a health coach now. I'm a board certified health and wellness coach, and I coach specifically for brain health. And
Hmm.
that's the first thing I tell people when we start working together is if you're looking for a quick fix, I'm not the person to help you do that because it just doesn't work like that. Some of these things take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And it's your brain, though. It's your whole life. It's your future. To me, I can't imagine why someone wouldn't want to make that commitment to doing everything you possibly can. And, I like to remind people that I am not the only, I might be patient zero, but I'm by far not the only person who's been able to reverse the symptoms that they've had of brain not functioning. There are hundreds of
Hmm.
us, hundreds. And I've even started a foundation to bring the numbers to the attention of the world. The Alzheimer's Survivors Foundation is really that. It's gathering cases and people who have been able to do this, just like I have. And that's the only way the world is going to be convinced of this, not an N of one. Everybody's quick to say, oh, you're an exception, or you didn't really have it, or all of this. And that's just bunk because we're now showing that in the numbers of people who have been able to do this make a difference. And it's not only Dr. Bredesen. I mean, Dr. Bredesen is a leader in this, and his protocol is what I followed. But there's also Dr. Isaacson, who was at the Wheel Institute for Neurological Diseases in New York at Cornell. Cornell's the Wheel. He's now a director in another department. Dr. Mark Hyman. I mean, there are just so many renowned doctors who agree that lifestyle changes can reverse these symptoms. So people have got to be able to get their heads around that and say,
Yes,
yeah,
for
it
sure.
works. If you got to work it though, you got to be courageous to challenge and change your lifestyle. No more eating
Yeah.
the donuts in the morning for breakfast. It's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, so that was going to be my kind of the next transition here was to ask you about. So you recovered, and it really kind of sparked a mission with you to start this nonprofit. So just tell us about how did you get that idea, and tell us a bit about your nonprofit.
What is it, 6 degrees of separation, how we come together in life with people and suddenly we find that one thing leads to another. And that's sort of what happened. But through
Hmm.
the work of a very talented filmmaker, Marcus Vetter from Germany, who's done award winning documentaries for a number of years, he heard about Dr. read his first book and then started to do interviews and said, I really need to figure this out because it's not just in the United States, it's worldwide, and especially in Europe and in Germany, where he's from. So, from his interviews, he got to me as patient zero. We did an interview several years ago when we were still working together to complete the film. But then he introduced me to a number of people who were very interested in this and very interested in starting maybe a retreat or an area where people could come together and follow the principles of the protocol for a given period of time until they really got started on it. And we all went to Uruguay and met together for a week and just sort of came together. And so, in that meeting, in those daily meetings that we had, we decided that we needed sort of ambassadors to survivors to tell people that yes, there are survivors, and how do we do that? And it just sort of came together that the best way to do it would be to do a nonprofit to have our as many people who wish to share their story to come forward, and we do a video of those people, and then also be a resource to have resources for people who want to find out where they can get tested, where they can find doctors who will follow this program, follow this protocol, where they can find health coaches. So that's how we got started. We're young and new, and we did get all of our legal not for profit papers filed and our corporate papers and everything. And it's really gratitude that I have for those people who've worked very hard to get the foundation up and going. And my desire is when I finish my walk after November 15th, I will take a more active role. We'll have a newsletter. We'll have no cost to join. I mean, people can sign up and they'll get the newsletter. They'll also have access to our resources. So that's the plan. And my walk is really just about letting people know, being able to talk to people on the road, in coffee shops, in gas stations, in hotels, people I meet along the way, and let them know, what, and also in that process to honor my mother and her memory.
But I have to ask, because you're like reading my mind, and every like next question you're already answering it before I get to ask it, which is great. But what you are, and I hope it's okay that I state how. Can I ask how old you are? I mean, I know how old you are, but I just want to make sure that I'm not asking you an awkward question.
No, I'm
You
81
don't.
years old, and I turned 81 actually on the walk. I was
Uh-huh.
80 when I started. My birthday was in June. And I don't mind sharing that because I feel like it's a good example that you don't have to be held down because you're in your 80s or your
Mm-hmm.
70s or whatever, and that the limit to what one can do is really in our own viewpoint of what we can do. And I
Yeah.
understand that physically some people are not healthy enough to take on a challenge like walking across the country. But, I looked at it like this: it's one step at a time. I'm not running, I'm not racing. I walk, some days I walk faster than other days, but I just amble along and, every day get up and walk. And it's amazing. The miles just tick, 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 they click by. And now I'm over 2,700 miles and almost finished with the walk across the United States. So I think it's just, I wanted to be an example that if you set your mind to it, you can do it. And people say, well, aren't you afraid? And I say, I don't know what there is to be afraid of, really, except fear itself, and that's what I
Yeah.
was afraid of. When I was diagnosed, I was devastated and so fearful and so afraid that there wouldn't be an answer, there wouldn't be a way out of this. And I think that anyone who gets a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or Lewy bodies or any of the neurological diagnosis that just basically say there's no hope for you, it's really hard for anyone who hasn't been diagnosed that way to understand what that feels like. It's devastating, just absolutely devastating. And you see that your life and your life with your family and the future plans are just seem to be dissolving. And I want to be able to share my story to give people hope that everybody can improve, everybody can get better a day at a time. And how much better you get, it really depends. It depends on a lot of things, but you definitely can every day get better. I do believe that.
And so what I really wanted to ask is what I'm saying, you're 81 years old, right? And how did you get the idea to walk across the United States? That's what I want to know, because I mean, I don't know many people that would just one day wake up and be like, oh, well, why don't I just walk 3,000 miles for my nonprofit? What gave you this idea?
Um, well, it was kind of funny how it evolved rather, and it was I had this life that was pretty exciting, being overseas, being in conflict zones, and being evacuated under fire at one point from Yemen, and things that were really like, your adrenaline is running all the time, your cortisol is probably over the top all the time. And then I came back, and of course, COVID hit, and I did other things during that period of time, but I felt like I wanted to do something that would really call attention to this issue. And I didn't, it was something that just came to me. I thought, well, this is something that I love exercise, and I've spent a lot of time of my adult life overseas in
Mhm.
over 30 different countries, and yet I've really not spent that much quality time in my own country. And what better way than walking across it and meeting people and seeing things along the way at a level that you just don't see in a car when you're, or certainly not when you're flying from point A to point B. So this has been a wonderful opportunity to do that and to meet people and talk. Everybody wants to talk about it. And
Mhm.
the, I think the scary part of it is that I rarely have I met anyone who doesn't know someone, a member of their family or a loved one, who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It's just amazing. I mean, I went to a pharmacy the other day to pick up something, and the gentleman, a clerk there, said, "Oh, my grandfather just passed away with this." So it's just constantly I have opportunities to talk to people about this, and that's what's been so incredibly um, rewarding for this. And it just kind of
Mhm.
came to me. This was something I could do. I didn't want to
Yeah.
run across because I don't think that my 81-year-old knees would like that. But luckily,
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems physically with my feet or legs or knees. So that's been a blessing.
That's amazing. So what I understood is you've been walking for 7 months now, approximately. Is that
Yes,
correct? And so
that's right.
what's like the most, I don't know, if you want to tell like the most interesting or a cool thing that's happened, just a story from your walk. I mean, 7 months is a long time. I'm sure you've had all sorts of interesting experiences. Is there something that stands out that you want to tell us about?
I'm trying to put those, all those, there've been many things that stand out, but I've also, just because I'm trying to formulate now that I'm getting close to the end of it, like wanting to write up these experiences,
Mhm.
to really just determine. But I think some of them have been very small and very little things that have happened. But, people running after me in a shop to catch me because they saw me on the evening news, and then us standing out and then talking to each other and having somebody say, you've really influenced me. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to start exercising. So
Mhm.
they really said that it had an impact. And one day I was walking through a very small town in Texas, and it was really almost like one of those ghost towns. I mean, it was really, like old. Everything was kind of unpaved and dusty, and it was extremely hot. And this old gentleman, I think he was probably younger than I am. I don't consider myself old, but I guess I better get to reality one day and say I am old. But anyway, this gentleman came up to me, and he said, he was wearing a army a hat with an army and symbol on it, and he approached me and he said, I saw you walking days and days ago because I drive my truck back and forth, through these cities, and I saw you on the road several times, and I want to know, where are you going and why are you doing this? And I said, well, I'm heading to Florida. And his jaw dropped open, and he said, can I buy you a bus ticket? And I said, well, thank you so much, but I think I'm going to keep walking. And anyway, we chatted, and he reached into his pocket and he brought out a star in fabric that you would put on your clothes, like an emblem. And he said
Mhm.
it was a star from the American flag, and that he always carried them because he was very much a patriotic person, and he wanted to give this star to me. And of course, I took it with gratitude, and I have it, and I treasure that. So I mean, there were just so many cases like that where people really shared
Mhm.
their story. I had a long walk through the Apache reservation that is so huge out west. I mean, it goes across, is in Arizona, and also in part of New Mexico and Texas. And I met so many people who would come up to me and they would hug me and say they were praying for me, for my
Oh,
safety. And it's just really, really has been touching, very touching. So
that's
it's been
amazing.
great.
And were there was there ever a time during the walk where you thought that you weren't sure if you were going to complete it, or was it just smooth?
It's funny because I read a couple of books before I started out of people who had made the walk, and most of them are guys, and they're kind of anywhere from their early 20s to mid 30s. And one of the books, which I thought was pretty well written, talking on a sort of day to day what to expect. And he said that most people who start the walk don't finish it, that it's something
Mhm.
that they get a certain way. They think that they want to do it, but then they quit, they give up because they don't realize that it's a lonely journey, and it's hard and it's hot and it's cold, and there are a lot of things that are some days things happen and you just really don't feel like that you want to keep walking. But I was sort of anticipating that I might get to that point.
Mhm.
But I can honestly say that I've never felt like I wanted to quit or that I wouldn't make it. And I do think that a lot of people, when I first announced that I was doing the walk, I think there are many people who thought, oh, great, she'll never make it. She'll quit in the first few
Really?
weeks, the first few months, first few hundred miles. But I just look at it as every day it's what I do. I get up and put my shoes on and, get my food together and my fanny pack with the water and all of that, my sunscreen, and off I go. And that's how I do it. I don't know what I'll do when I stop, when I finish. I think that's what worries me now. I'll get up in the morning and start walking out the door, I guess. I don't know. It's funny.
Yeah. And so how are you feeding yourself and how are you staying hydrated?
Well, the feeding part has really been very fortunate because I have a few sponsors. When I started, I just kind of started asking different organizations, "Would you like to sponsor my walk?" And
Hmm.
luckily, some of them said yes. So, a company called Trifecta is they do home delivery of prepared food, organic food, and balanced food in different types of menus and styles and diets. I mean, they'll do a ketogenic diet, they'll do a vegan diet, they'll do a diet with meat. We've been able to arrange a once a week delivery of food. Look at that. Yum. So let's see what we have. Barbacoa black bean bowl. And this always tells the calories, the protein, the number of carbs, fats. It has some really good ingredients in it.
Hmm.
So you just heat them up, and that's what I've been doing since I started April 5th, and it's now it's in November now, but they once a week, and you can choose and change your menu a little bit, and that's what I that's how I eat. Organic salmon with sweet potatoes and cauliflower rice. Yum. I didn't even have to go fishing for the salmon. Here we go. Get rid of it. Let's see. Very, very delicious. Very yummy. Now, I supplement that because obviously, when the frozen and packaged, you can't get things like fresh arugula salads and fresh fruit. So I supplement with the fresh items that I would want to have. I eat a lot of kind of like I feel it's like a squirrel. I'll have nuts and seeds and things to snack on as I'm moving.
Hmm.
I I don't recommend that as a lifestyle way of eating. I don't think that's not what I do at home. I do more restricted eating periods, but because I'm burning so many calories and I didn't want to lose weight, I have lost about 15 pounds since I started. And I'm a small person anyway, a small frame. So, in order to hold back on that losing weight, I've had to consume more, and I
Hmm.
have to kind of almost like eat and walk and eat, which my poor body is going to get a shock when I get home. I'm going to go back to my normal health, what I consider a healthier eating pattern. But for
Hmm.
me, and I think for anyone doing an athletic act of extended period, one needs to adjust to the physiology to what your body needs.
Amazing. Judy, you are such a beacon of hope to so many people. So, before we wrap up, and I'm definitely going to ask how people can support your organization and all of that, but what's your final message for our listeners, for people living with Alzheimer's? What would you like to leave them with?
Well, the first one is don't give up hope. I mean, definitely, do the research, read up. I mean, follow not only certainly Dr. Dale Bredesen and his books. He has An Ageless Brain is his most recent, his fourth book, and it really puts the protocol and the kind of testing that one needs and what one would expect from the test results. So it's a very readable book. But his first book, The End of Alzheimer's, these are very good guides. And then the company that he started and is affiliated with still as the chief medical officer is Apollo Health. And they have, for people who sign up for Apollo Health, and it's a very reasonable monthly amount, and it gives you this incredible 50 or 60 page report analyzing what your blood work, the analysis of your blood markers, and it provides guides for recipes and exercise and all kinds of things. And I think that for me, when I started out, that was not developed yet, so I didn't have that. So basically, for me, I had sort of my list of these are my supplements. This is what I'm going to do, and I kept in close contact with Dr. Bredesen. So he hadn't written the books yet, and I didn't have Apollo Health to go to, but I certainly do recommend that. But first of all, people need to know that there are things that you can do to improve your situation, and get a good practitioner who understands this method, a good doctor to work with, and then a good health coach, because doctors, we love the doctors, but they don't have the time to spend as much time as a health coach will with you and sort of handhold and help you through what is a very, very difficult journey. So I highly recommend that. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a health coach, because I'm obviously limited to how many people I can work with, but they're just, look up, find out what's available, and avail yourselves of that. And your brain is worth it. It really is. It's worth every effort you put into it.
And so how can people support your organization?
Well, the would love to have support. We're a nonprofit and tax deductible is the Alzheimer's Survivors.org. And on that, we're new, so we'll have our first newsletter coming out probably about a month from now. But we'll have lots of resources there, and I think most importantly, testimonials of people who have gone through a similar path. And I think that's what people really want to hear. They want to hear about other people's experiences. So that, and then judywalks.com is my website now, and that has a lot of videos and drone footage and things that people can really look and see from the start in San Diego right across all the states that I've been through to where I am now in Florida. You can share that experience that I've had by watching that, and so I do highly recommend going to those areas. And Instagram, it's the same. Judy Walks America is the
Hmm.
Instagram, and TikTok, and I think YouTube address. So that'll probably tell you, that gives little snippets of things that we do along the way.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to get all those links for you and make sure that we have them on your landing page when we put the video up.
We do have a place you can click to donate, and I personally don't like asking people for money, but any organization needs money to operate. We want to be
Of
a good
course.
resource. And so if people feel in their hearts they want to, they can click on the donate button, and they would get a receipt for that if they did. So we'd
Great.
certainly appreciate a lot of
Great.
work
Well,
to do in
Judy,
the future. This walk is just the start. We got lots of work to do.
I'm really excited to see what you're going to do next after walk. I'm not going to ask you to tell me, but after walking 3,000 miles, it's like, wow, what's coming next? So, Judy, thank you so much for sharing your journey from diagnosis to recovery and now walking across America. Your story is just, it really challenges what we thought was possible and really offers hope for families who are living with Alzheimer's, facing Alzheimer's. It's just incredible. So, thank you so much for being here with us. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank all of our viewers here at the Healing Dementia Summit. Thank you so much for joining us, and we have a lot of other fantastic experts and interviews coming up at the summit. So thank you.